So we're looking at harvesting tomatoes, and hopefully you'll have a bountiful harvest like this grower is having here, on how we're going to go about harvesting them and when we go about harvesting them. So this whole harvesting comes down to the rule number one is that your first tomato will always take longer than you think. But once you get that first one, the rest come right after, it seems like. So harvesting tomatoes, well, what's your market? Are you looking at CSAs? Are you looking at farmers markets? Are you looking at chefs demanding them? That can determine how frequently or how often you go through and harvest your tomatoes. You want to watch the weather though. If it's rain in the forecast, you may want to harvest a day early, one to get in the field, but also to reduce the chance of cracking of their tomatoes. Very common with some cherries. Mixed colors and varieties can be very attractive when you put them in a quart, so you may want to harvest not all of one variety, you want to do a mix. Sometimes there's U-pick operations to reduce the labor of harvesting in particular cherry tomatoes. For larger tomatoes, can you sell yellow tomatoes? Do they need to be red? Do they want to be striped? Again, that's going to depend on what market you're selling to. And on larger tomatoes, well, how big is too big? Is there a certain size people won't buy? They don't want to spend that much on one single tomato. Again, something to consider for your individual market. Something some growers don't know about when harvesting tomatoes is called the breaker stage. This is very common late in the season. This is the break in color the tomato will ripen from. So when we see that kind of very hinting, kind of pinkish, different color towards the blossom end, so it's called the breaker stage. If you see this speck of pink at the blossom end, this means your tomatoes reach the breaker stage, and you can harvest it at that time, and it may take a little bit longer than you'd like, but it will eventually ripen to a red color. So important, like I said, late in the season when we're dealing with a frost coming down and potentially ruining the rest of your crop, you can go through and harvest what's called the breaker stage and beyond tomatoes, and eventually if stored in an area above freezing, they will eventually turn red. So just a little helpful hint there when you're going through and harvesting or determining when to harvest your tomatoes.